Greetings, everyone. I got some new information from my spirit guides today about the files, about the situation we find ourselves in, what we can do about it. So I thought I'd come on here and share some of that. For those who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Lisa Vest. I'm a psychic medium, a medical intuitive, and a precog. And my guides have tasked me with sharing with the people the spiritual significance of the political situation we find ourselves in. So I sometimes share information via stories, and sometimes I use more plain speech. And so I did start a new story series today, which I posted earlier today, as the first episode of the Chronicles of the Future Chronicles of the Persistence, episode 1. And I'll continue with that story. But I also thought I'd come on here and do some plain talking about what I was shown today. So the first thing that my guides shared with me was the fact that there are lots of guardians who are trying to guard these files, guardians of the ugly, people who want to keep this a secret. And of course, these are people who are all implicated. These are people who are incriminated. These are people who are active members of bad traffic rings engaging in crimes against children. And so they have a reason, right, to keep this secret. So there are lots of guardians of the ugly. And Blondie is just kind of the chief guardian of the ugly. And everything I am saying is for entertainment purposes only and allegedly. These are visions from my spirit guide. They are not facts. They are not my opinion. So what they showed me was that Blondie, just like the other guardians of the ugly, she's a guardian because she is intimately connected to the files, either because she's in them or because she has very close people she's very close to who are in them. And so she has personal reasons for wanting to safeguard these secrets. And then they talked about all of the other guardians and how they're all over the world. And these are people who have, again, have a reason to want to keep things secret. And they showed me a vision of a board with dominoes, kind of like one of those really elaborate domino designs where someone has made a design of dominoes and then you push one domino over and then it knocks all the dominoes over. But this design is so complex that you can't knock all the dominoes over with just one domino, but there are lots of levers or trigger points at different places along the design. And if you push any one trigger point, it will cause a certain set of dominoes to go down. And they were explaining that it's very complex and very fragile, and that there are guardians of the ugly who are kind of responsible for different sections of this domino design. And they're very concerned that their particular lever or trigger does not get activated. And so they're jostling and finagling and negotiating and trying to see whose section of the domino design should go down next and how can they safeguard their section. And so certain people are saying, oh, no, you should throw those people to the wolves. Let's sacrifice those people over there. Let's out them. Let's give their names so then we can keep our names secret. And what they've decided to do recently is to throw the public some bones. And that's why certain names are being released and other names are still redacted, right? So a lot of the redactions in the files are not of survivors. They are not of innocent people whose identity should be protected. They are of perpetrators. And meanwhile, they have exposed the names of lots of survivors, including even some pictures of a pornographic nature that have been released showing the faces of survivors. So we now know the redactions are not about protecting any innocent people. But the redactions are not universal, right? There are some that are being held back and some that are being released. And so what my guide said is they're trying to throw people some bones. And that's what they tried to do with Epi. They were like, oh, he's the mastermind. He's the evil mastermind of this all. And so we'll just get rid of him, or at least make it look like we got rid of him. And that kind of absolves us. It was nobody else. It was just him. Of course, he was not, in fact, the mastermind, he was just one of the worker bees, and the masterminds are actually much bigger, way above his pay grade, and one of the masterminds is the head clown. And they don't want that, that they were been trying these many years to keep that part quiet by exposing the epi and the madam, right? Let's throw them these two bones, keep everybody quiet. Now they're throwing additional bones out, right? And they're trying to, of course, focus on throwing out blue bones, but it's kind of silly to talk about blue or red bones because at the time that this US-based portion of the bad traffic ring was being run by the head clown, he was himself a blue hat. They were all, a lot of them, there was no red hat, blue hat distinction. Many of the people who run these things belong to both hat divisions. And so it really has nothing to do with that. But of course, the current circus is trying to make it a blue hat, red hat thing. It won't work. But what we need to know, what my guides were talking about, was how the people who are actually in charge are trying to throw bones to keep people from becoming aware of the bigger picture. And they did, corroborate what was said by a couple of survivors now, in that they said that actually head clown was the boss and Epi was an underling. And what they said that's interesting is that these people behind the scenes, these power brokers, these very powerful power brokers, are trying to throw head clown out as a bone. They're at the point where they're ready to sacrifice him. And that's because he has stopped being useful. So the whole reason he was used up until now is because he was very useful. He was also in this position because he had the ability to manipulate a large number of people through blackmail and extortion because of evidence he had that they were involved in crimes against children. And so the reason that is starting to become less of a piece of leverage for him is because some of them are already being revealed in the disclosure, but also because he is losing his physical strength. He is on his way out physically, but also because so many people have turned against him that he doesn't really have any kind of support anymore. So they were saying that there's a lot of wrangling now to figure out who can be thrown out to the wolves and who can they betray. And they're like, they want to throw him out, the head clown. Of course, he's threatening, if I go down, you all go down. That's his intention. But there's all these people who are trying to figure out, well, how can we bring him down without bringing anyone else down? And can we just throw a few bones out along with him that people can maybe prosecute and feel like, okay, we got the bad guys, and then keep the rest of them safe? So there's all of this behind the scenes wheeling and dealing and negotiating and strategizing about which dominoes are going to get thrown out and which are going to stay standing. And the thing is, there are more and more people who are like, I think we're done with him. And so he's getting surrounded by more and more enemies, more and more people who want to take him down or take him out to protect themselves. And more importantly, to protect the bigger system, right? So this is the really important part they were saying, is that what's being exposed now, all of these horrific details about all of these crimes that were committed by so many powerful and rich men and a few women, but mostly men around the world. What they did in these rings of criminality is one small part of a much bigger network of power brokers, right? And that's what they're worried about people finding out about. They're they're less worried about people finding out about criminality, and they're more worried about people finding out about the power structure of the world. And so when I asked, why was the head clown, if he was so powerful before, why is he less powerful now? They said that he's losing some of his power. And it was in part because he's losing his physical strength. And as a result, some of the spirits, the malignant, nefarious spirits are withdrawing. So he's being bolstered up, right, by these spirits, and they're giving him the power that he has. He doesn't innately have the power. He was given the power, but they're withdrawing from him. Other people are also withdrawing from him. So people like Rasputin, people like, Needle Noodle, right? They are starting to withdraw because they're starting to realize that they don't really need him anymore. They could get done what they want done just by working with Adolf Milkman, right? And so Adolf Milkman is behind the scenes, wheeling and dealing. And they're like, we don't really need our figurehead anymore. We'll just continue working with our behind the scenes milkman, and our puppet, our in front of the scene guy is becoming kind of a liability at this point. So they were showing all of these people behind the scenes, and behind the scenes, these are the people who run the world, the power brokers. So these are the leaders of corporations and the leaders of governments. And they work together behind the scenes to run things. And so they're now getting together and talking this out, because what's happening too is that the corporations are realizing that head clown is not really serving their interests the way he was before. He's starting to become a liability for them financially. And recall that I predicted this was going to happen many months ago. My guide said there will come a time in the future when the wealthy merchants realize that his actions are going against their interests. And that's when they will withdraw support from him. And so that's starting to happen now. And so the real fear of these people is that we're going to start to see the connections, and we're going to start to see the structure. And so they're more concerned about that than us finding out about the bad traffic. So they said what they're concerned about is making sure that people don't understand what the larger structure of global power is. And yeah, they would have rather people didn't already find out that there were all these connections between epi and sports and academia and business and government. But because that guy, for all intents and purposes, is deceased, they're less concerned about stuff that comes out about him, because they're like, oh, he's not a real person to a lot of people anymore because he's perceived as, right? And, so they were thinking, oh, maybe if we got rid of head clown, if he were also, then they would have these two people that were seen as kind of the architects of the bad traffic, and that they both were gone. And then maybe that makes the problem go away. And if we can get the problem to go away, then people will stop looking and investigating. Because as long as people are looking and investigating and researching and going down rabbit holes and figuring things out, then somebody has to pay a price, right? And so they're like, who can we make pay the price so that we don't all pay the price, right? Now, they did also mention another person by name, a certain relative-in-law to head clown, a cushy relative. And they said that the cushy relative is actually a key player, but that he's very good at keeping his name off of things. He's one of those people that works in the shadows. A lot of the stuff he does is in the shadows. And they said that there are people like that who work entirely in the shadows and whose names will never be found on any of these documents. And then there are other people whose names can be found. So what does all this mean for we the people? They said it was really important that we the people do not stop investigating the files ever, right? Not ever, but until a change comes. And so we cannot give up. Because if we keep investigating and keep researching and keep asking questions about these files, we are going to discover the global power structure. If we stop, if we stop, like let's say somebody shuffles off the mortal coil, let's say somebody gets prosecuted, let's say somebody gets impeached, and then we decide, okay, we're satisfied and we're done with that and we're moving on, that will be a very big mistake, right? And that's what they want. And so they are going to try to create a situation where we will be kind of encouraged to do that, kind of beguiled into this sense of justice, like, oh, well, head clown is no longer in office, or he, got removed, or he met his maker. And so, let's move on, right? And so that's what we have to not do, because beyond the really ugly information that's coming out now is other information about the structure of power in the world. And if we don't get to that level or layer of information, then these things will continue, right? Maybe we'll shut down a portion of it, a piece of it, right? One of those little a few dominoes, right? We're going to take out a few dominoes, but it won't take out the whole domino design. The only way we can do that is if we're able to see the whole domino design. And that means we can't be satisfied when a few dominoes get prosecuted. And so one of the things they talked about is how these power brokers have a lot of irons in the fire. They got a whole lot of mischief that they're involved in, right? And all of that mischief is keeping us really busy, right? So we have to worry about joust interference. We have to worry about, not having the ability to put in tickets anymore. We have to worry about wars overseas in our name. We have to worry about innocent people being body snatched off the street and unalived and tortured and essayed, right? People who are, by the frozen crew. We have to worry about the loss of institutions. We have to worry about the targeting of trans and LGBTQ and Black and brown people. We have to worry about so many things, right? We have to worry about women losing basic rights. And so because all of these things are going on, we're overwhelmed and we're exhausted and we're like this, trying to keep up with all the madness. And so what the guide suggested is that we have to start getting really organized, and we have to organize in such a way that we're all specialized. And so it can't be the same 5 to 10% of the population that is doing all the dancing in the streets and going to all the meetings and writing the letters and and figuring out new tactics and publishing information and going online and trying to motivate people. No, it can't be. It has to be that there are different people doing different things. And so everybody has a skill, everybody has a strength or a specialty, right? And there are so many things that have to be addressed. So for example, someone needs to address joust integrity, right? That's a big issue. Will the midterms happen? Will they be free and fair? Will it ever be possible again for us to have jousts where we choose? We weren't able to choose. So for the last one. And what they told me is that the last 3 were compromised. And we got lucky with 2020 because of all the mail-in tickets. Made it impossible for them to completely finagle it. They tried, but they couldn't because of that. But in 16 and 24, they were able to with digital manipulation. So that's why they've been trying to get rid of mail-in this whole time, right? Because that's the only thing they can't beat. So that's a whole big thing, right? And so there's people working on that. We need people working on that, not the future and the past. People who are working on past results and people working on making sure future is different. And so that's a whole category that somebody could focus all their attention on. There needs to be a whole group of people who specialize in that and only work on that, like SMART and ETA, but even more people, right? So like SMART and ETA having thousands of helpers, think of it that way. Maybe you volunteer for them, maybe you donate to them, maybe you form your own chapter in your town to do what they're doing in your town. Maybe they turn into chapters nationwide where everybody is doing the same work, replicating the same work that SMART and ETA are doing, but they're doing it in every town, every village, every hamlet, right? That's one piece of work. There are other people who are trying to protect their neighbors from popsicle crew. And there are lots of different jobs in that area too. Maybe you're part of the Whistle Mania Brigade. That's one of the things I've been doing, is going to Whistle Mania events where we're putting together whistle packets. And I was going to show it. Where is it? I gotta get one and show it. But creating packets of whistles and get to know your right information and numbers to call if you see frozen crew, and then distributing that widely to like businesses and organizations and neighbors, and just making sure that people are aware of how you can whistle to protect people or to alert people. And then there are other people who are doing rapid response, where they're actually the ones that are showing up at the scene and documenting and putting pressure on the frozen crew, trying to sometimes get in the way of them being successful in kidnapping. And then there are people who do aftercare, who are getting the name and numbers of the people who've been kidnapped and contacting their family and getting a lawyer, right? That's other things that other people are doing. And then there are other people who are focused entirely on how do we protect women and women's rights under this regime. There are people who are focused entirely on trans and LGBTQ rights. There are so many. There are people focused on anti-war, on trying to stop wars. There are people who are focused on Congress and trying to influence Congress. Other people are focused on their states or their cities, trying to influence mayors and governors. And then there are influencers or people who are trying to get information out, educate people, provide hope to people. There are those of us who are spiritual, who are trying to do spiritual work and unite people on a spiritual level, or try to, in my case, teach people or help people to understand the bigger picture, the bigger spiritual picture. There are just so many different roles, but everyone needs to find what it is and then get together with several thousand other people, right? Because we have enough people that we could devote tens of thousands to each topic and there would be enough. We don't actually need the same person running around doing everything because we have enough people. And so overall, the vision was really hopeful, because they were talking about how there's just many more of us than them. And, they were saying that even though the overlords have all the weapons and have all of the hate and the violent tendencies, we have the numbers. And they were also pointing out that this kind of network of bad traffic and this network of global power and global criminality is like a quilt or a blanket where there are some loose threads. And it's our job to pull out those loose threads. And if we pull them out one by one, we will eventually completely disintegrate the network. And so right now we're just pulling out threads. We're like, oh, this person was involved. Let's get him. And so we got Poland doing an investigation. We got the UK doing an investigation. We got Lithuania doing an investigation, right? Here in the US, we're not doing any investigations, but they will come. Right now, they're just trying to bring the Clintons into Congress and investigate them. But that's going to lead to others. All of these threads are going to pull out others. Every time we pull out one person, identify one person, question one person, start investigating one person, that's going to lead to others. So stay hopeful, my friend. Stay hopeful. And I want you to let me know in the comments what you think you're going to focus on or what you've already decided to focus on. What is your thing? What's your contribution? Or a suggestion that I didn't mention about an area where you think maybe 10,000 people should focus on that particular area. So let's think of like topics where we could devote 10,000 people to each topic. And it might be more than 10,000, but let's say minimum 10,000. And then with all of these different kind of coalitions working on different things, we end up being very, very effective. Also, they mentioned, before I mention one more last thing, if you want to buy me a coffee, thank you to everyone who bought me a coffee. And thank you to everybody who follows me and likes and comments and shares. Thank you to my members. Thank you to my Patreon members. Thank you to people who give me super chats and super gifts and whatever they're called. All the gifts that you give me, I appreciate. But one last thing I wanted to say is that, one more thing I wanted to say is that when we concentrate our efforts on particular issues like that, we end up being super effective. And we saw that with Minnesota, right? We had a concentration of people addressing one issue all at the same time in a sustained way, right? And they pointed out how it worked, how now some of the Frozen crew is leaving. The circus is starting to change some of their rhetoric. They're starting to back down. They had one narrative about pretty and good, and they've now changed their narrative. There's actually now an investigation that's been authorized into their unalivings. A week ago, that was not the case. And what they said was that the overlords were saying, oh, it's okay. We need to withdraw from Minnesota because even though it might look like they won because we're withdrawing, it's better to withdraw and look like they won today than to stay there and for it to continue to look like they are winning every day. And that's how it's been looking there, right? Every day, the people have been looking like they're winning. And the Frozen crew has been looking like they're losing. And that has been inspiring the rest of the country. And that's what they're afraid of, is for everybody to get inspired and for everyone to feel empowered. They want us to feel powerless. And if we feel empowered, then we win. The only way they win is by convincing us that we have no power. It's a total psyop, right? And if we think we're powerless and we stay at home and we just sit at home and moan and cry, and, oh, we'll never make it, they're too powerful, there's nothing we can do, then they will win. But the people have kind of reached a turning point where we're not doing that anymore. There's a critical mass of us who understand that we are powerful. And when people like the people in Minnesota, the people in Los Angeles, the people in Chicago, DC, Philadelphia, when we saw images of people standing up and fighting back, that inspired a lot of other people throughout the country to feel empowered. And that's really why the dancing and singing is so important. It's not because that's the only thing that's going to work. It's not. It's just one part of what's working. But when other people see people dancing and singing in the street, they feel inspired, they feel empowered, and then they get off their tuchus and participate in some way. And because there's so many more of us and so few of them, and because we as a group are more powerful than the overlords, all we need is to inspire enough people to join us. And this is what is happening. It's happening. Right now, it's happening. All right. Thank you for watching. And I'm going to go live tomorrow night, Thursday night at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. and talk more about this and share more of what the guides told me. I only shared about maybe a third of what they told me today. So I'll be discussing more of that in my live tomorrow.